Hello, and welcome to this week's Agape Leaders Monday Motivation. I am so excited for this week's guest, Mitchell Rodgers. Mitchell is a young man who we must pay attention to. He loves the Lord, he loves people, he loves teaching, and he's good at it. I am so thankful, Mitchell, that you said yes when I asked you. Side note, I asked Mitchell at the last minute to step in, and he did without hesitation. And the word that he has for us today is relevant and something that we need to take to heart and then heed. So without further ado, here is Mitchell Rodgers with this week's Agape Leaders Monday Motivation.
Hey, what's up, you guys? Thanks for tuning in to today's Monday Motivation. I'm so excited to have the opportunity to share with you guys. As I was trying to think about what I would even share with you guys, the first thing that really came to mind was my favorite thing to focus on about leadership, and that is perspective. Because I believe that perspective makes all the difference. You see, the reality is that you cannot always control what happens to you, right? And it can be really easy sometimes to let the things that are out of our control end up taking control over us. What I mean is that we can let things like people's opinions in different situations and circumstances end up turning us into a cynic that becomes uninspired, insecure, and negative. And the truth is, nobody wants to look to that type of person to lead them. However, there is one tool that is in your arsenal that I believe you can use to regain control, and that is perspective. You can always control the way that you view a situation. You may not be able to control the situation, but you can control your perspective of that situation and what's going on. Craig Groeschel is a big leadership guru. He runs the Global Leadership Summit. He has a podcast that he puts out every month called the Craig Groeschel Leadership Podcast. I highly recommend checking that out. And while you're on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and check out the Agape Leaders Podcast as well too, if you're not already subscribed to that. But Craig Groeschel just put out a book recently called Winning the War in Your Mind. And that's the truth, right? There is a war going on in your mind every day. And when we stop paying attention to what's going on there, it's really easy to start losing. What I mean is that, have you ever noticed how one simple thought can ruin your entire day? Right? How one situation, one circumstance, one tweet, one post on Instagram, one comment, one review, one simple thing can trigger a thought that runs in your mind over and over again, ultimately cascading into other thoughts that ultimately end up dismantling and disrupting you until you give up. And you end up calling it quits. Your mind is such a powerful weapon that can either be used for you or it can be used against you. And the key might just be perspective. One simple trick that Craig Groeschel talks about is looking at problems as opportunities, to renaming it, changing your mindset, changing the language, and ultimately being able to change the situation and the circumstance that is before you. Instead of looking at a situation as a problem or a challenge that hinders you, you change your perspective and you look at that situation or that circumstance as an opportunity to grow and adapt and become better. It's simple, but the chain reaction could be monumental for you, for your team, for your organization, for your leadership. What ends up happening is that instead of seeing that situation as a problem and becoming negative, you see it as an opportunity, and that brings excitement and creativity to you, to your team, to your organization, and you're no longer stalled by what was before you. Now it is something that is launching you forward into what is next. You see, it's so simple. It's changing your perspective. So the question is, what is one problem, one situation, one circumstance before you that you believe is stopping you, that you believe is hindering you, that you can change your perspective on? See it as an opportunity. Get creative and launch you, your organization, and your team forward into something new and into something better.
Thank you, Mitchell, for that motivating, inspiring word on leadership. I am so thankful for you, and I love watching what the Lord is doing in your life. Now, for those of you who don't know, this Monday Motivation is now also on our podcast platform. Our podcasts are on Spotify, Apple or iTunes podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many other platforms. Check it out, the Agape Leaders podcast, so you can take this with you where you go. And for those of you who are listening to the podcast right now, thank you. We really appreciate it. We would love for you to leave a review and to share this so that others can hear what we are doing at Agape Leaders. Hey, until next time, you have a blessed week.